My name is Greer Voss. I was 48, and my husband told 18 relatives I owed his mother $91,740 for putting up with me in my own home. Malcolm announced it between the roast chicken and the lemon tart, while everyone was still seated around the long walnut table my father had built. His mother, Sybil, sat at the opposite end beneath the bay window, wearing the soft blue cardigan she saved for occasions when she wanted to look fragile. Nobody laughed. That was how I knew Malcolm had prepared them. His younger cousins stared at their plates. Two of Sybil's church friends exchanged a glance. Malcolm's uncle leaned back and folded his arms as if a business presentation had begun. Malcolm placed a cream envelope beside my water glass. "This isn't punishment," he said. "It's accountability." I looked at the envelope without touching it. For what? For everything Mom has done since she moved in. Cooking, organizing the house, receiving deliveries, supporting us emotionally, and tolerating the way you've treated her. Sybil lowered her eyes at exactly the right moment. One of the church women murmured, "Poor thing." I had invited those people into the house Malcolm had just used as a stage against me. I had planned the meal, paid the caterer, polished my father's table, and placed fresh rosemary beside every napkin. Malcolm had turned my hospitality into evidence for his prosecution. He pushed the envelope closer. "The amount is itemized. Mom deserves to leave here with dignity." That was the part he had not told everyone. Sybil had been asked to leave. Her condominium had suffered water damage 14 months earlier. Malcolm had said she needed our guest room for 6 weeks, perhaps 8. The repairs had finished before Thanksgiving, but Sybil always found another reason to stay. First, the paint smell irritated her lungs. Then, the elevator was unreliable. Then, she felt unsafe, sleeping alone. By February, she had rearranged my kitchen, moved family photographs into drawers, and begun referring to my study as the little room Greer wastes. On Monday, February 26th, I had given her written notice that her stay would end on March 31st. I had not shouted. I had not threatened her. I had even offered to pay for movers. 6 days later, Malcolm gathered his family in my dining room and presented me with his mother's invoice. I finally lifted the envelope. It was heavier than it should have been because Malcolm had slipped a brass house key inside with the papers. The key struck the table as I removed the packet. Sybil looked up. "That's symbolic," she said. "I'm showing that I'm willing to go once I'm treated fairly." It was not the only key she had. I knew because I had given her 2 when she arrived, a brass front door key and a smaller silver key for the side entrance. The silver key was still attached to the red leather tag I had seen in her handbag that morning. Malcolm knew that too. He was counting on me becoming angry enough to sound unreasonable. Instead, I read the first page. The invoice described Sybil as a live-in household manager, companion, meal planner, and marital support provider. It claimed she had worked 7 days a week from January of the previous year through the end of February. It also charged me for emotional injury caused by hostile occupancy conditions. The signature on the final page appeared to be mine. Above it was a sentence stating that I had retained Sybil's services and accepted personal responsibility for payment. The signature was good. It was not good enough. I spent 22 years tracing concealed assets and reconstructed transactions for insurance carriers, family businesses, and attorneys. I knew how genuine signatures changed depending on speed, surface, and context. The one on that page had been assembled from a clean specimen, probably taken from a scanned tax form. I also knew something Malcolm did not. When Sybil moved in, she had signed a completely different agreement. It stated that her stay was temporary, that no wages or fees would accrue, and that she gained no financial interest in the property. My friend, Della Quill, had witnessed it. The original was not in the house. If these family stories remind you how quickly kindness can be rewritten as obligation, please subscribe and stay with me, because Malcolm's invoice was only the first document he had prepared. I set the packet back inside the envelope. Malcolm watched my face with the concentration of someone waiting for a crack in glass. "Do you have anything to say?" "Yes," I replied. "Your attorney can send this to mine." The room changed. Malcolm had expected tears, perhaps a slammed door. Calmness had not been included in his script. Sybil pressed a hand against her cardigan, So, after everything I endured, you're hiding behind a lawyer? I'm asking for the document to be handled properly. This is exactly what I mean, Malcolm said to the table. She makes everything cold. Mom lives here for more than a year, and Greer treats her like a trespasser. His uncle asked whether we had discussed the matter privately. We tried, Malcolm said. That was untrue. The first time I had seen the invoice was 30 seconds earlier. I did not correct him. Every person in that room had already chosen what my reaction meant. If I defended myself too eagerly, Malcolm would call it aggression. If I stayed quiet, he would call it indifference. So I did something he had not anticipated. I picked up the brass key and held it towards Sybil. You said this was symbolic. Do you want me to keep it? Her gaze went to Malcolm before she answered. Yes. I placed it in the inner pocket of my handbag. Everyone saw the transfer. Malcolm's jaw tightened, although his voice remained pleasant. Mom will retain access until this is resolved. With which key? I asked. The churchwomen stopped whispering. Sybil's expression hardened for half a second. My side door key. Thank you. That small confirmation mattered. If Malcolm later claimed I had taken all her access, 18 people had just heard otherwise. Dinner ended without dessert. The relatives departed in clusters, carrying leftovers Malcolm had packed into my containers. Sybil went upstairs without helping clear the table. Malcolm stood in the kitchen doorway as the caterer's assistants loaded their trays. You embarrassed me, he said. You announced a fabricated debt in front of your family. It isn't fabricated. Then you won't mind scrutiny. He stared at the envelope under my arm. That stays here. It was addressed to me. It contains Mom's private information. I removed my phone, photographed the front and back of the envelope, and placed it inside the locked drawer of my study desk. Malcolm watched me turn the key. I detached that key from my ring and slipped it into the zipped compartment of my handbag. He said nothing. At 10:47 that night, the home security application notified me that the study camera had gone offline. The camera was not hidden. It had been installed after a neighborhood burglary, and every adult in the house knew it recorded the downstairs common areas. A small green indicator glowed whenever it was active. I opened the application from bed. The kitchen and hallway cameras had also disconnected. Malcolm lay beside me, facing the wall. The security system is down, I said. Internet problem. My phone is still connected. Then check it tomorrow. I did not challenge him. The recordings uploaded continuously to encrypted cloud storage, and the footage before the disconnection was already preserved. I slept in the guest room downstairs with my handbag on the chair beside me. At 7:15 on Monday morning, March 4th, I received an automated email from the Richmond Circuit Court Clerk's Land Records Alert Service. I had enrolled 2 years earlier after a client lost part of a warehouse through deed fraud. A document containing my name and property description had been recorded the previous Friday. I read the notification twice. The filing was not Sybil's invoice. It was a memorandum claiming that she possessed a secured financial interest in my house under a household services agreement. Attached to it was a quit-claim deed that appeared to transfer ownership from me alone to Malcolm and me as tenants by the entirety. The deed carried my signature. It also carried the seal of a notary named Celandine Fallow. For several minutes, I sat at the kitchen island while the refrigerator hummed behind me. Malcolm had already left for the gym. Sybil was upstairs running her bath. I had bought that house in 2012, 5 years before my marriage. The down payment came from the proceeds of my first accounting partnership, and the deed had always been in my name alone. Our prenuptial agreement identified the property as separate, including its appreciation. Malcolm had never paid the mortgage. There was no mortgage left to pay. Now someone had filed a document stating that I had given him half. I printed the alert, placed it in a plain folder, and took my laptop charger from the study. The cream envelope remained in the locked drawer because removing it while Malcolm was home could create an argument over possession. I photographed the drawer before leaving. Sybil appeared at the top of the stairs in her robe. Running away? I'm going to work. Malcolm said you might react dramatically. I looked at her bare feet on the runner I had replaced after she spilled hair dye. Did he also tell you he filed a deed? She gripped the banister. That answer was enough. I left through the front door, locked it with my silver key, and drove to my office. At 9:12, a bank officer named Niles Bellwether called. He worked in the fraud prevention department of Blue Ridge Commonwealth Bank, where Malcolm and I kept a modest joint checking account. Niles spoke carefully. "Mrs. Voss, your husband submitted an application for a home equity credit line. Before we proceed, we need to verify your participation." I did not participate. There was a pause filled by the faint sound of typing. "Did you sign a quitclaim deed on February 28th? No. Did you execute a limited power of attorney authorizing your husband to borrow against the property? No." The typing stopped. "Please don't discuss this call with anyone who may have access to your identification documents. Can you come to our downtown office?" I told him I could be there Thursday afternoon. That allowed me time to obtain counsel without giving Malcolm reason to suspect the bank had contacted me. Niles instructed me to bring government identification and any original ownership records I possessed. He also told me the application had been frozen. When the call ended, I opened the joint account. Malcolm had transferred almost the entire balance into an account I could not see. The transaction had been initiated shortly after midnight while I slept downstairs. He had left enough to keep the account from closing. That was his counterattack before he knew I had made a move. I downloaded the statements, saved them to a new encrypted drive, and called Della. She had been my closest friend since our first accounting jobs after college. She later left finance and spent 15 years advising tenants and homeowners through a legal aid organization. When Sybil needed temporary housing, Della had warned me that family arrangements became dangerous when nobody wrote down the terms. That was why she had come to the house on January 12th of the previous year. She watched Sybil sign the occupancy acknowledgement at the kitchen counter. I handed Sybil a photocopy that day, and Della drove me to the bank afterward, where I placed the original inside my safe deposit box. Della answered on the third ring. "Are you at work?" "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." I told her about the dinner, the forged invoice, the recorded deed, and the bank call. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked one question. "Do you still have the box key?" I opened the small combination safe beneath my office bookshelf. The safe held passports, backup drives, and a white envelope containing a narrow steel key. "It's here." "Then don't go home alone." I contacted Althea Pike that afternoon. She was a family law attorney Della trusted, but her first available appointment was Wednesday morning. Until then, she advised me by phone not to confront Malcolm, alter the locks, remove Sybil's possessions, or announce that I knew about the loan application. "Preserve everything," she said. "And if you feel unsafe, leave without warning them where you're staying." I returned to the house before 6. The security hub was missing from the hall cabinet. Malcolm was chopping vegetables in the kitchen while Sybil sat at the table reading the newspaper. He looked up as if we had shared an ordinary day. "Internet technician took the hub," he said. "Which technician?" "Someone from the company." "Do you have a receipt?" "He'll email it." No technician had visited. The front door camera had remained online through its backup cellular connection, and the activity log showed nobody entering after I left. I did not tell him. I set my handbag on the counter and asked Sybil whether she had used the side entrance that day. "No." "So, your silver key is still in your handbag?" Her newspaper lowered. "Why are you monitoring my keys?" "I'm confirming that you have access." Malcolm placed the knife flat on the cutting board. "Stop interrogating her." I poured water into a glass and carried it upstairs. "Behind me," Sybil said, loudly enough for me to hear, "This is what I've survived." That evening, Malcolm slept in our bedroom with the door locked. I remained in the downstairs guest room. At 2 in the morning, I heard the study doorknob turn. Someone tried it once, waited, and tried again. I did not move. The next morning, the cream envelope was still inside the drawer. The lock showed a bright scratch around its edge. On Wednesday, March 6th, Althea met me in a conference room overlooking the James River. She was 53, with copper-gray hair and a habit of leaving a full second of silence before answering difficult questions. I placed the printed land alert, account statements, photographs, and cloud footage log across the table. I did not yet have the original invoice, Althea told me not to take it from the house unless I could do so without conflict. She examined the recorded memorandum first. The clerk's office doesn't authenticate the truth of what gets presented, she said. It records documents that meet formal requirements. That's why this appears in the chain of title, even though you say it's fraudulent. Can they borrow against the house? Not while the bank has frozen the application. But this deed clouds ownership until a court declares it void. She turned to the supposed household services agreement. The signature resembled mine, but the initials beside two amendments had been copied from a different source. I recognized them immediately. They came from the annual tax organizer Malcolm and I had signed the previous April. Althea asked how I could be certain. I explained that my left wrist had been immobilized after surgery that month. I had initialed the organizer with my right hand, producing a cramped backward hook unlike my usual mark. Malcolm had access to the scan because we filed jointly. The forged agreement used those unusual initials repeatedly, even though its typed date was months before my surgery. Althea looked at me for that silent second. That's useful. It proves the source. It helps prove it. We'll still need independent examination. Then I told her about Sybil's occupancy acknowledgement in the safe deposit box. Althea's expression changed. Does it address compensation? Explicitly. Does Malcolm know it exists? He knew I wanted written terms, but he was away at a sales conference when Sybil moved in. I never discussed where the original went. Sybil received her own copy, which means she knows. She may believe I lost mine. Althea closed the folder. Good. Let her keep believing that. We discussed immediate safeguards. Althea prepared notices to the bank and title insurer, requested certified copies from the clerk, and arranged for a forensic examiner to preserve the security cloud account. She also warned me that Malcolm would probably strike back through family court. He may claim the property is marital because it served as your marital residence. That argument won't override a valid prenup and sole premarital title, but he can still request temporary occupancy. Sybil may assert tenant protections. Do everything cleanly. I signed a limited authorization, allowing Althea to communicate with the bank and title insurer. I watched her scan it, return the original, and place the copy in her case file. Before I left, I gave her the spare key to my office safe, not the bank box key. If Malcolm gained access to my workplace, Althea could retrieve the encrypted backup drive. She wrote "office safe" on a tag and placed the key in a sealed evidence envelope while I watched. The bank box key remained with me. Have you ever watched people turn a favor into a debt the moment you set a boundary? I had seen it in other families, but I had never understood how quickly a whole room could be recruited. Thursday afternoon, Niles met me inside the bank's secure lending office. A compliance employee remained behind the glass partition, visible but outside hearing range. Niles showed me the documents Malcolm had uploaded. The package contained the forged deed, the fabricated services agreement, a limited power of attorney, and copies of my driver's license. The license image came from a scan I had emailed Malcolm when he booked a rental car for us the previous summer. The power of attorney was more dangerous than the invoice. It authorized Malcolm to sign loan documents, communicate with lenders, and direct the proceeds into an account under his control. The bank had scheduled a remote closing for March 7th. Malcolm apparently believed no one would speak to me separately. "Why did you call?" I asked. "The applicant requested that spousal verification be waived due to your alleged hospitalization," Niles said. He included a letter. I read it. The letter said I had entered a private neurological treatment facility and could not tolerate direct communication. It asked the bank to protect my privacy by dealing exclusively with Malcolm. Attached was a photograph of a hospital bracelet bearing my name. I recognized it. The bracelet came from my wrist surgery 11 months earlier. Malcolm had photographed me in recovery because he said my expression looked peaceful. Niles had checked the facility named in the letter. It did not provide neurological treatment and no public number connected to its supposed medical director. That discrepancy triggered the manual review. He slid a tablet toward me and asked me to state, on video, whether I had authorized the transaction. A bank security notice above the screen explained that the recording would be retained. I answered every question clearly. Then he escorted me downstairs to the safe deposit area. I presented the steel key. The vault attendant inserted the bank's guard key first, and I inserted mine second. Together, we opened the narrow box. The attendant carried it into a private room and left. Inside was a blue folio containing the deed from 2012, my prenuptial agreement, the occupancy acknowledgement, and my father's original table plans. I had placed the plans there because his signature was on every page, and I could not bear the idea of losing them in a fire. I removed the 3 legal documents and left the plans in the box. Niles copied the deed and the relevant pages of the prenup. I watched him stamp each copy, and he returned every original to me. I placed them back inside the blue folio, carried it to the vault room, and locked it in the box. The attendant withdrew the bank key. Then I withdrew mine. The steel key went back into the white envelope inside my handbag. The occupancy acknowledgement was exactly as I remembered. Sybil had signed beneath language stating that her stay created no employment relationship, no promise of future payment, and no claim against the property. Della's witness signature appeared below it. When I returned home, Malcolm's car was in the driveway. Sybil's was gone. The front door opened before I reached it. Malcolm stood in the doorway holding a legal pad. "Where have you been?" "At work." "You left the office before lunch." I did not ask how he knew. He stepped aside. On the hall table lay the cream envelope from my locked study drawer. The brass key was still in my handbag, but the invoice had been removed. "You broke into my desk," I said. "It's my house too." That wasn't my question. Mom needed her records. "How did you open the drawer?" He held up a bent metal letter opener. "Don't make this theatrical, Greer." The drawer had belonged to my father. Malcolm had gouged the wood beside the lock. I looked toward the staircase. "Where is Sybil?" "At urgent care." "What happened?" "She became dizzy after taking her medication." "What does that have to do with me?" His face tightened with controlled sorrow. "She says you moved her pill organizer." I had never touched it. Malcolm had found his counterclaim. He told me Sybil discovered her Wednesday and Thursday tablets switched. She had taken the wrong dose, lost her balance in the bathroom, and bruised her hip against the vanity. Malcolm said he found her on the floor after returning from the gym. I asked whether he had called an ambulance. She refused one. "Who drove her to urgent care?" "A church friend." "Which one?" "That's irrelevant." It was relevant because Sybil's car was gone. If a friend had taken her, someone had also driven her vehicle away. I did not push. Instead, I photographed the damaged drawer and the envelope on the hall table. Malcolm snatched the invoice before it appeared in the frame. "That's evidence of Mom's claim." "Then preserve it." "Are you accusing us?" "I'm reminding you." Sybil returned 40 minutes later, driving her own car. She walked without assistance and carried a pharmacy bag. Malcolm hurried outside and offered his arm only after he noticed me watching through the window. At dinner, Sybil described the bathroom fall in front of Malcolm. Her account placed it shortly after breakfast. Malcolm said he had found her before lunch. I had left for work at 7:40. The kitchen camera had recorded Sybil preparing tea at 8:15, after the time she later claimed she was lying injured upstairs. The cloud footage also showed Malcolm returning at 8:37, not before lunch. They did not know I still had the recording. On Friday morning, March 8th, a sheriff's deputy arrived at my office with temporary court papers. Malcolm had filed for divorce. He requested exclusive use of the house, control of our joint accounts, and an order preventing me from contacting Sybil except through counsel. His petition alleged financial intimidation, interference with medication, unauthorized surveillance, and threats of homelessness against an elderly dependent adult. Attached were statements from 3 dinner guests describing me as cold, controlling, and hostile. One statement claimed I had seized Sybil's only key. That person had watched Sybil confirm she still possessed another one. Malcolm also attached a transcript from the dinner. In it, I appeared to say, "I will have both of you removed and nobody will stop me." I had never said those words together. The transcript had combined fragments from different moments. I had said, "I will have the invoice reviewed," and later, while discussing the caterer's trays, "Both of you removed them from the warmer." Malcolm had built a threat out of ordinary sentences. The petition asked for an emergency hearing the following Tuesday. He had moved faster than Althea expected. I called her from the office conference room. She read the papers I scanned and told me not to return home alone. I booked a room at a small hotel near Monument Avenue and asked a uniformed off-duty security officer from my building to accompany me while I collected clothing. The officer's name was not important to the case, but his presence was. He stood in the entryway with his body camera activated after I signed the building's service acknowledgement. Malcolm opened the bedroom door and watched me pack. "You don't have to do this," he said. "You asked the court to keep me away." "I asked the court to protect Mom." I placed work clothes, medication, and toiletries into one suitcase. I did not take furniture, financial files, or any item belonging to him. Sybil remained in her room until I reached the front door. Then she appeared holding the red leather tag. The silver side door key hung from it. She said, "I suppose you'll tell people you were driven out." "No. I'll tell the court where I stayed." Malcolm followed me onto the porch. "You could settle this tonight. By paying the invoice? By acknowledging what Mom sacrificed." I looked at the house behind him, especially the bay window where Sybil had sat during dinner. "What happens after I acknowledge it?" "You transfer the money. Mom releases her claim. We discuss the marriage privately." "And the deed?" For the first time, Malcolm's expression emptied. "What deed?" "The one filed last Friday." He recovered quickly. "You signed it." "No. You forget things when you're stressed." The security officer shifted his stance, and Malcolm noticed the body camera. He lowered his voice. "Your work has made you suspicious. My work has made me careful." I carried the suitcase to my car. The officer did not touch it, so there could be no later claim that he removed household property. After I loaded it myself, I signed the end time on his service sheet and kept my copy. That night, Malcolm emailed me an offer. If I paid Sybil's claim and agreed not to challenge the deed, he would withdraw the allegations about her medication. He wrote that litigation would destroy my professional reputation because my clients trusted me with confidential financial records. The threat was polished enough to look like concern. I forwarded the email to Althea. On Tuesday, March 12th, the emergency hearing took place in a courtroom crowded with Malcolm's relatives. Nearly every adult from the dinner had come. Sybil wore the blue cardigan again and used a cane I had never seen before. She entered leaning on Malcolm while his attorney, Eamon Thorne, carried 2 binders. Althea and I sat at the opposite table. Della waited in the hallway because she might be called as a witness later and could not hear the testimony. Eamon argued that Malcolm needed temporary possession of the marital home to care for his vulnerable mother. He displayed photographs of Sybil's bruised hip and the damaged study drawer, claiming the latter proved I had ransacked the room while preparing to flee. Althea objected. The judge sustained the objection, but the image had already been seen. Malcolm testified that I monitored Sybil through cameras, restricted kitchen access, moved medication, and threatened immediate eviction. He admitted filing the deed, but claimed I had signed it voluntarily months earlier and asked him to delay recording it for tax reasons. That explanation was new. It was also clever. It transformed a fresh forgery into an old marital decision. Eamon then produced a photocopy of the supposed deed bearing a handwritten date from the previous August. The recorded version had a February notarization, but Malcolm said that merely reflected when I finally acknowledged my prior signature. The judge asked whether I had been present before the notary. Malcolm said yes. Celandine Fallow was not in court. Eamon explained that she had a respiratory illness and would testify later. Sybil described the alleged medication incident. She cried without losing the rhythm of her answers. When Althea asked why she had signed an agreement saying her stay was temporary and uncompensated, Eamon objected because the document had not yet been authenticated. The judge did not allow us to introduce it at that stage. Then came the near defeat. Eamon presented a text message from my phone number to Malcolm's. It read, "Make sure your mother takes the blue pills tonight. I changed the box." The message appeared to have been sent on the evening before Sybil's claimed fall. I had not sent it. However, the screenshot showed my name, my number, and the correct date. Malcolm testified that he had received it, assumed I had followed Sybil's doctor's instructions, and deleted it only because his phone storage was full. He said the screenshot survived in his cloud photographs. Althea asked to examine the original device. Eamon said it had been damaged when Malcolm dropped it in the courthouse parking garage that morning. A bailiff had seen him carrying a cracked phone into the building, which made the story look plausible. The judge was concerned enough to issue temporary restrictions. Malcolm received exclusive occupancy pending a full evidentiary hearing. Sybil could remain with him. I was prohibited from entering the property without prior arrangement, although I retained responsibility for insurance and essential maintenance, because title was disputed. The judge froze the house against sale or borrowing, but did not order Malcolm to return the joint funds immediately. For the first time, he almost won. Outside the courtroom, his relatives surrounded Sybil near the elevators. One of the churchwomen embraced her. Malcolm looked across the marble lobby and gave me a small, sympathetic smile, the kind meant to suggest he regretted what I had forced him to do. Althea waited until we reached the street before speaking. The text is the problem. I didn't send it. I believe you. We need the carrier records. He may have used my linked tablet. Where is it? I remembered the device I kept in the kitchen drawer for recipes and music. I had not seen it since the dinner, at the house. Malcolm had access to it. The tablet synchronized with my messages whenever it connected to the home network. He knew the 6-digit passcode because we had shared it during a road trip. The court order prevented me from retrieving it. Althea filed an emergency preservation request that afternoon. The judge directed both parties not to alter, destroy, or dispose of electronic devices associated with the case. A neutral digital examiner would collect them at the house on March 21st. Malcolm had 9 days. That evening, Della joined me in the hotel dining room. She had waited outside the courtroom for hours and still wore the green scarf she used when she was nervous. "I should have made 3 originals," she said. "1 is enough. If the bank box stays safe." "It will." Della told me something she had never mentioned before. When Sybil signed the occupancy acknowledgement, she had asked whether the agreement could be used to throw her onto the street. Della had explained that it did not bypass Virginia notice requirements. It simply recorded that the stay was temporary and unpaid. Sybil then asked whether compensation could be added later. Della told her yes, but only through a new agreement signed by everyone. "Why didn't you tell me that?" I asked. "Because she signed the correct document afterward. I thought she was asking a normal question." It had not been a normal question. Sybil had understood exactly what the acknowledgement prevented. 2 days later, Niles called Althea with information the bank was permitted to disclose under the authorization I had signed. Malcolm had contacted the lending department after the loan freeze. He claimed I was experiencing memory loss and that my denial should not be trusted. He offered to bring Sybil to verify my condition. Niles referred the matter to bank security. The bank preserved the complete online application, login records, and uploaded source files. The power of attorney had been uploaded from the home internet connection at 1:16 in the morning after the dinner. The joint account transfer occurred from the same address 19 minutes later. Malcolm had done both while I slept downstairs. The metadata inside the deed file showed it was created on February 27th, not the previous August. Its author field contained the initials MR. Those details helped, but Eamon had an answer. He argued that metadata could change when an old document was scanned or converted. He was right about that. We needed the original source. On Thursday, March 21st, I stood across the street while the neutral digital examiner entered my house under the court's order. Althea remained beside me, and Eamon waited near Malcolm's car. The examiner had authority to collect the kitchen tablet, Malcolm's damaged phone, the home router, the security system components, and any computer used to create the disputed documents. Malcolm surrendered the cracked phone immediately. He handed over a laptop and the router. He said the tablet had disappeared months earlier. I saw Sybil behind the bay window, watching us through the curtain. The examiner searched only the locations listed in the order. He found the missing security hub in a storage bin under the basement stairs. Malcolm claimed the internet technician must have left it there. No service request existed. The kitchen tablet was not in the drawer. As the examiner prepared to leave, Della arrived in her own car. Althea had asked her to attend because the order also permitted collection of Sybil's copy of the occupancy acknowledgement if Sybil claimed it differed from mine. Della remained on the sidewalk while the examiner asked Sybil for her copy. Sybil said I had taken it. Then Della looked toward the detached garage. "The red file crate," she said. Everyone turned. Della explained that when she helped Sybil move in, she had carried a red plastic crate from Sybil's car to the garage. Sybil said it contained condominium records and insurance papers. The occupancy copy had been placed inside that crate before Della left. The garage was not included in the original collection areas. Eamon refused consent to search it. That refusal did not prove anything, but it gave Althea a specific location for a supplemental request. Malcolm responded before she could file it. He stepped into the street and accused Della of conspiring with me. He said she had planted documents during the move-in and had always wanted our marriage to fail. Della did not answer. Sybil opened the front door and called out, "That woman has hated me from the beginning." The neighbors were watching now. Curtains shifted along the block and a delivery driver slowed beside the curb. I said nothing. This had become public again, but the audience was no longer entirely theirs. The examiner carried the router, hub, laptop, and phone to his vehicle. He sealed each item in a separate evidence bag, recorded the numbers, and had Malcolm sign the collection form. Eamon received one copy. Althea received another. As the vehicle pulled away, Malcolm called after me. "You still have time to stop this." I looked at the bay window. "So do you." The supplemental order for the garage search was granted the next afternoon. Before it could be carried out, Eamon informed Althea that Sybil had voluntarily produced the red crate. The occupancy acknowledgement was not inside. Sybil claimed Della must have removed it during the move. What they had not removed was a pharmacy receipt lodged beneath the crate's folding handle. It showed that Sybil's prescription had been refilled 3 days after the alleged medication switch, not before it. More importantly, the dispensing instructions said the blue tablets were taken in the morning. Malcolm's screenshot had told him to make sure she took them at night. The fabricated message contradicted the pharmacy label. Althea obtained Sybil's medication records through a signed release Sybil had previously attached to her own court petition. Those records showed no dosage change during the relevant month. The urgent care notes created another problem for them. Sybil had told the clinician she bruised herself while stepping out of her car, not falling in the bathroom. She had denied dizziness and reported no medication error. Eamon tried to keep the notes out by withdrawing the medication allegation. Althea refused to let it disappear quietly. The digital examiner's report arrived on Monday, April 1st, while we were gathered for court-ordered mediation in a glass conference room at the courthouse annex. Malcolm sat with Eamon on one side. Sybil occupied a chair near the wall, tapping the cane against her shoe. Althea and I sat opposite them. The mediator had just asked whether a financial settlement could resolve all claims. Eamon proposed that Sybil release her lien, Malcolm waive any claim to half the house, and everyone agree not to accuse anyone else of fraud. In return, I would pay the invoice and allow Sybil 3 more months in the property. It was an offer designed to make them appear generous while preserving nearly everything they wanted. Althea slid the unopened examiner's report toward me. "Would you like a moment?" I read it slowly. The damaged phone had not been dropped in the courthouse garage. Diagnostic logs showed the screen shattered at 4:38 that morning while the device remained connected to the home network. Malcolm had broken it before leaving the house. The supposedly deleted text had never existed in the carrier's message database. The screenshot was an image created with a conversation-mocking application installed on Malcolm's laptop. The kitchen tablet had connected to the router 2 hours before the digital collection. Then someone performed a factory reset and disconnected it. Although the examiner had not found the device, the router retained its hardware address and reset traffic. The security hub yielded the most useful evidence. Its local storage preserved video from the night Malcolm claimed an internet technician removed it. The footage showed him opening the hall cabinet, disconnecting the hub, and carrying it toward the basement. It also captured Sybil standing beside him, holding the cream envelope from my study. The report did not contain audio from that hallway angle, but the cloud account did. Sybil had said, "Once the bank releases the money, she can complain all she wants." Malcolm answered, "She won't know until it's done." I finished reading and passed the report back to Althea. The mediator asked whether our position had changed. "Yes," I said. "There will be no payment." Sybil stopped tapping the cane. Eamon requested a private caucus with his clients. They left the room together. While they were gone, Althea asked me whether I wanted to offer Malcolm a narrow path. Relinquish occupancy, return the joint funds, withdraw the lien, and disclose where the tablet was. In exchange, we would allow the civil property issues to proceed without immediately seeking sanctions. The bank could still make its own criminal referral. We could not control that. How would you have proceeded then? Offered one final exit, or allowed the evidence to land without warning? I chose the exit, because I wanted my house back more than I wanted a dramatic victory. Malcolm rejected it. He returned after 20 minutes looking composed. "The recording is taken out of context," he said. "Mom was talking about an insurance payment for her condo." "What bank?" Althea asked. He did not answer. Eamon proposed reducing the claim. Althea declined. Sybil stood, left the cane leaning against the wall, and walked unaided to the restroom. The mediator watched her go. That ended the session. Outside the annex, Malcolm caught up with me near the security checkpoint. "You're destroying your own family over paperwork." "No, Malcolm." I continued walking. He said my name again, but a courthouse security officer stepped between us and directed him toward the opposite exit. The final evidentiary hearing began on Wednesday, April 10th. The courtroom was fuller than before because Malcolm's relatives returned, expecting the judge to confirm that I had mistreated Sybil. This time, Della sat behind me until she was called. Niles waited in the witness room under subpoena from the bank. Celandine Fallow occupied the front row beside Eamon's assistant. She wore a dark suit and held a notary journal against her chest. Malcolm looked relieved to see her. That was the last advantage he believed he had. Althea began with the ownership history. The certified 2012 deed established that I acquired the house before marriage. The prenuptial agreement, signed by both of us with separate counsel, stated that the house and its appreciation remained mine. Eamon did not challenge those documents. Instead, he argued that I later chose to transfer half to Malcolm. Celandine was called to authenticate the quitclaim deed. She testified that she had met both of us at my house on February 28th. According to her, I presented my driver's license, acknowledged the signature, and stated that I wanted Malcolm protected if something happened to me. Eamon asked whether I appeared confused or coerced. "No," she said. She was clear and deliberate. Celandine opened her journal. It contained an entry bearing my name, license number, and what looked like my signature. Beside it was Malcolm's signature as a witness. The relatives behind him shifted with renewed confidence. Under cross-examination, Althea asked how Celandine knew Sybil. "We attend the same church." "How long have you known her?" "About 6 years." "Did Mrs. Rusk pay you for the notarization?" "No, Malcolm did." "How did he pay?" "Cash." "Did Mrs. Voss sign the journal in your presence?" "Yes." Althea displayed an enlarged image of the journal entry. "Which hand did she use?" Celandine hesitated. "Her right. I write with my left hand." That alone did not destroy the testimony. I had used my right hand temporarily after surgery, and Eamon tried to suggest the notarization happened during that period. Althea asked Celandine to identify the driver's license I supposedly presented. Celandine described the photograph, expiration date, and Richmond address. Then Althea introduced the bank's copy of my license scan. A tiny diagonal crease crossed the upper corner of that image. The same crease appeared in the photocopy Celandine had attached to her journal, even though my physical license had never been folded. She had not inspected the card. She had printed Malcolm's scan. Celandine insisted I had also been physically present. Althea asked about the time. Approximately 7 in the evening. The home security footage showed that from 6:20 until 8:11, Sybil and Malcolm were alone in the dining room. I did not arrive home until 8:23. The front and side exterior cameras recorded every entry. Eamon objected to the footage's foundation. The neutral examiner authenticated the cloud archive and the local system logs. The footage was admitted. Celandine's face changed. Althea then asked why the notary entry number was out of sequence. The entry before mine was dated March 2nd. The entry after mine was dated March 4th. My supposed February 28th entry had been inserted between them. Celandine said she sometimes entered appointments late. Virginia notaries were required to maintain accurate chronological records when using the journal as their evidentiary basis. Late entry did not automatically void an acknowledgement, but it undermined her certainty. Then Niles testified. The bank's source file preserved the deed before it was converted into a signed PDF. The original word processing document had been created under Malcolm's user profile. Revision history showed 4 prior property descriptions, and a note in the margin reading, "Have see use old date." Celandine lowered her head. Eamon requested a recess. The judge denied it until Althea finished that line of questioning. Niles also authenticated the loan application, and Malcolm's request to bypass my verification because of a fabricated hospitalization. He described the hospital bracelet photograph and the bank's direct call to me. When asked whether the bank had funded the loan, he said no. The application remained frozen, and the fraud department had closed it after preserving evidence. That resolved the loan. There had never been proceeds for Malcolm or Sybil to receive. Next came the occupancy acknowledgement. Della testified that she had driven to my house on January 12th of the previous year because I asked her to witness Sybil's temporary housing arrangement. She identified all 3 signatures, mine, Sybil's, and her own. Althea presented the original retrieved from the bank box. Niles confirmed the bank access log showing the box had remained unopened from January of the previous year until March 7th. That meant I could not have created the document after the dispute began. The paper itself carried an embossed seal from Della's former legal aid office. Della had used the office seal with permission because the agreement came from its standard family occupancy template. Sybil's copy had disappeared from the red crate, but the original had stayed beyond everyone's reach. Eamon argued Sybil signed under pressure because she had nowhere else to go. Della answered that Sybil's repaired condominium remained insured and habitable except during the initial restoration. The acknowledgement did not waive lawful notice. It simply denied compensation or property rights. Then Althea gave Sybil the fabricated services agreement. "Did you read this before it was recorded?" Sybil said yes. "Did Greer sign it in front of you?" "Yes." "When?" "Last summer." "Before or after her wrist surgery?" Sybil looked toward Malcolm. "I don't remember." The forged initials were displayed beside my genuine signatures from before surgery and my temporary right-handed initials from the tax organizer. The examiner explained that the forged agreement reused the right-handed marks pixel for pixel, including an ink speck caused by dust on the tax scanner. A person signing naturally could not reproduce the same microscopic speck 6 times. Eamon rose to object, but the comparison came from his own client's produced tax files. The objection was overruled. The cream envelope became the next exhibit. Malcolm had retained it after breaking into my desk. Under the preservation order, Eamon eventually produced it with Sybil's papers. My photograph from the dinner proved its condition before Malcolm took it. The dinner recording showed him sliding it to me. The security footage later showed Sybil carrying it from the study after the camera hub was disconnected. The chain was complete. The judge asked where the original invoice had been between those moments. Malcolm said he did not know. Sybil said she had kept it in her room. The hallway audio captured Malcolm telling her, "Put it back in the envelope before her lawyer sees the staple marks." The invoice introduced in court had no staple marks. The version recorded with the property memorandum did. 2 pages had been removed and replaced after the dinner. The discarded pages were recovered from Malcolm's laptop backup. They contained a paragraph stating that payment would be drawn from a future home equity line. That paragraph tied the public demand directly to the attempted loan. Althea played the dinner recording last. Everyone heard Malcolm announce the debt. Everyone heard Sybil say she would return her key once she was treated fairly. Everyone also heard her confirm that she retained the side door key. The relative who had sworn I seized her only access stared at the floor. The unedited recording contained no threat. The manufactured sentence from Malcolm's transcript appeared as separate fragments nearly 11 minutes apart. When the audio ended, the courtroom remained quiet. The judge addressed Celandine first. Her testimony and journal would be referred to the State Notary Commissioning Authority and the Commonwealth's attorney for review. The judge did not decide criminal guilt in that hearing, but ordered her journal retained under seal. A bailiff approached Celandine. She handed him the journal, and he carried it directly to the clerk. Then the judge ruled on the house. The quitclaim deed was declared void because I had neither signed nor acknowledged it. The memorandum of Sybil's claimed interest had no valid contractual basis and would be released from the property record. The house remained my separate property under the original deed and prenuptial agreement. Malcolm's request for continued exclusive occupancy was denied. Sybil's compensation claim was dismissed. The joint funds Malcolm transferred were ordered preserved pending final marital accounting, and the court found that his concealment could be considered when dividing the remaining marital property. The judge gave Malcolm and Sybil 48 hours to collect personal belongings. A sheriff's deputy would supervise. They were prohibited from removing fixtures, records, furniture, or anything belonging to me. Malcolm stood very still. Sybil whispered something to him, but he did not turn. Eamon requested a longer period because Sybil was supposedly medically fragile. Althea pointed to the mediation hallway video showing Sybil walking briskly without her cane. Eamon did not renew the request. The judge then asked about the missing kitchen tablet. Malcolm said he had no knowledge of it. The neutral examiner testified that the tablet's hardware address connected to the home network on the morning of collection and sent a factory reset command from Malcolm's user account. The judge found Malcolm had violated the preservation order. That finding ended his last attempt to appear merely mistaken. When court adjourned, the relatives did not gather around Sybil. They moved toward the exits separately, avoiding one another's eyes. Malcolm approached me near counsel table. A deputy stepped closer before he reached us. He looked older than he had at dinner. "You planned this," he said. "I kept records." "You knew about the bank call when you sat there pretending to read the invoice?" "No. The bank called the next morning." He searched my face, perhaps trying to decide which part of his defeat had been chance and which part had been waiting for him. Sybil came beside him without the cane. "You never wanted me in that house. I welcomed you for 14 months. You made me sign that paper. I asked you to sign it. You kept your copy." Her eyes sharpened. "You can't prove what happened to my copy." "I don't need to." The deputy directed them toward the side exit. Althea remained beside me until the courtroom emptied. Then she opened her briefcase and removed the sealed envelope containing my office safe key. She broke the seal in front of me, recorded the return on the custody line, and placed the key in my palm. I returned it to the zipped compartment of my handbag. On Friday, April 12th, 2 sheriff's deputies met us at the house. Malcolm had rented a moving truck. Sybil's condominium manager had confirmed her unit was available, so her belongings were being taken there. Malcolm had arranged a furnished apartment across town. I stayed on the sidewalk with Althea while the deputies supervised each room. Sybil's furniture consisted of a bedroom set, several lamps, her clothing, and the red file crate. Malcolm took his clothes, computer desk, golf clubs, and the television he had purchased before our marriage. He tried to remove my father's walnut dining table. One deputy checked the inventory I had submitted, then asked for proof it belonged to Malcolm. Malcolm said the table had been a wedding gift. I retrieved a certified photograph from the property archive showing my father building it in 1998. The underside bore his carved initials and mine. The deputy directed the movers to set it down. They carried it back into the dining room and placed it beneath the bay window. Sybil emerged with a ceramic bowl that had belonged to my grandmother. I identified the hairline repair along its base and produced an old insurance photograph. She surrendered the bowl to the deputy, who handed it directly to me. I carried it inside and set it on the kitchen counter. By late afternoon, the truck was full. The deputy asked Sybil for all house keys. She removed the silver side door key from the red leather tag and placed it in his open evidence pouch. He sealed the pouch, wrote the time, and handed it to me after both sides signed the turnover sheet. The brass front door key remained in my handbag from the dinner. Malcolm surrendered his black electronic fob and a garage remote. The second deputy tested both against the entry system, disabled the fob through the control panel, and gave the remote to me. Malcolm claimed he had no other key. The locksmith, who had arrived under Althea's arrangement, waited until both of them left the property. Then he changed every exterior cylinder while a deputy remained present. He gave me 3 new keys in an unopened packet. I opened it myself. 1 key went onto my ring. 1 went into the office safe. The 3rd stayed sealed for emergencies. Malcolm climbed into the truck's passenger seat. Sybil sat between him and the driver, her blue cardigan folded across her lap. Neither looked toward the house as the truck pulled away. The last relative present was Malcolm's uncle. He had come to help with the move, but spent most of the afternoon beside his car. Before leaving, he approached the porch. "I believed what I was told," he said. "I know. Malcolm showed us messages. I know that too. He waited, perhaps hoping I would release him from embarrassment. I did not. He walked back to his car. The deputies completed their final inspection. No one remained in the house except Althea and me. I signed the possession acknowledgement, and the senior deputy handed me the sealed pouch containing Sybil's returned key. Then the institutional part ended. The house felt larger that evening, but not peaceful. Empty rooms often magnified what had happened inside them. The bay window reflected the table, the staircase, and one woman standing alone in the center of her own dining room. Althea asked whether I wanted her to stay. No, Della's coming. She touched the edge of my father's table, careful not to disturb it. I'll call on Monday. I thanked her and watched through the front window as she drove away. Della arrived after sunset with 2 cartons of soup and a loaf of bread. She had brought no advice, which was why I loved her. We ate in the kitchen because I could not yet sit at the dining table. For a while, we discussed ordinary things: a leaking faucet in her laundry room, the dog she was considering adopting, the basil plants dying on my windowsill. The quiet became bearable because it did not demand anything from me. After dinner, she asked what I planned to do with the house. I don't know. You don't have to decide tonight. I used to think keeping it meant keeping my father. Della looked toward the dining room. And now? Now, it feels like a place Malcolm learned to use against me. She did not tell me memories could be reclaimed. She did not insist that leaving would let him win. She tore the bread in half and gave me the larger piece. That was all. Over the next month, I stayed in the house while the divorce moved forward through our attorneys. I will not turn that period into a list of filings because what I remember most was not paperwork. I remembered the first morning I opened the kitchen cabinets and found Sybil's labels on every shelf. Breakfast bowls, guest mugs, Malcolm's supplements. I removed them slowly, one at a time, and cleaned the adhesive with orange oil. I found the missing kitchen tablet behind a loose panel in the basement laundry closet. I did not switch it on. I photographed it where it lay, called Althea, and left the room until an evidence courier collected it. The courier sealed it in front of me and gave me a receipt. The examiner later confirmed Malcolm had reset it and hidden it. Nothing on the device altered the outcome, but its discovery closed the last unexplained object in the house. I also found Sybil's photocopy of the occupancy acknowledgement. It had been folded inside the lining of an old guest room suitcase she forgot to take. Her initials appeared beside every paragraph, including the sentence waiving compensation. I gave the suitcase and document to Althea. Sybil's attorney arranged collection of the suitcase after the copy was preserved. Even at the end, Sybil had hidden proof in a place she expected me never to search. The joint funds were eventually returned to the marital account, and the division credited my share accordingly. Malcolm left the marriage with what he could establish as his. He did not receive the house. Celandine resigned her notary commission before the state hearing. I learned this from the public notice Althea sent me, not from anyone in Malcolm's family. The bank's referral remained outside my control. By early summer, I decided to sell. I did not sell because Malcolm had contaminated every room. I sold because the house had become too large for the life I wanted next. My father had built the table, not the walls. I could take the part that mattered. A restoration broker arranged a private sale to a couple who planned to preserve the woodwork. During their final walkthrough, they stood beneath the bay window and asked whether I would consider leaving the walnut table. No, I said. That goes with me. They accepted the answer. On the morning I moved, Della came carrying coffee. The movers wrapped my father's table in quilted blankets and secured it inside the truck. I watched each strap fastened before they closed the doors. The ceramic bowl went in my car, padded by the green scarf Della had worn to court. I placed the blue folio from the bank box inside a fireproof case. After the property sale was complete and the ownership records no longer needed to remain there, Niles accompanied me to the vault. I used my steel key. The attendant used the guard key, and I removed the folio and my father's table plans. The empty box was closed in both our presence. I kept the plans. Malcolm and Sybil did not attend the sale closing. They had no ownership interest to release. When the proceeds arrived in my separate account, I looked at the confirmation once and shut the laptop. That afternoon, I drove away from the Richmond house with my own key still on my ring. I left it in the lockbox for the buyers only after their representative met me at the front steps and signed for it. The key changed hands openly. Nothing disappeared. I moved into a smaller brick cottage near the river with a narrow garden and enough room for the walnut table beside the rear windows. Della helped me arrange the chairs, although neither of us agreed which side had the better light. One Sunday in October, we ate soup there while rain tapped the glass. The ceramic bowl held pears in the center of the table. My father's plans rested in a frame on the wall, his signature visible beneath the drawing. Across town, I once saw Malcolm outside a grocery store. He was loading bags into an older sedan while Sybil waited in the passenger seat. They were arguing, though the windows were closed and I could not hear the words. Malcolm noticed me at the traffic light. For a moment, he looked as if he might raise a hand. He did not. The signal changed, and I drove on. That evening, I opened the small drawer beside my new front door. Inside lay the brass key Sybil had dropped onto my father's table when Malcolm said I owed her money for enduring me. It no longer opened anything. I placed it in the ceramic bowl among the pears, where it caught the last light from the window without belonging to any lock. Thank you for staying with me. Join me for the next story.